Good afternoon, dear students. The topic of the lecture, Parasitism as ecological phenomenon. Lecture plan. Parasitism is an environmental phenomenon. Medical parasitology is the science of parasitic diseases. Types of parasitism. Cycles of parasite development. Intermediate, definitive, and reservoir hosts of parasites. The next one, the origin of parasitism. Relationships in the system, parasite-host. Formation of adaptations to parasitic lifestyle. The next one, invasive parasitic diseases, their classification, and zoonotic diseases. The form of antagonistic cohabitation of organisms belonging to different species is parasitism. In this form of relationships, one organism, parasite, receives food and habitat from another organism, host. Medical parasitology studies human parasites, diagnostic methods, treatment and prevention of diseases caused by or spread by parasites. Medical parasitology includes medical protozoology, which studies the human parasitic protozoa, medical hematology, which studies parasite worms, and arachnoentomology, which studies the representative of phylum Arthropoda that cause diseases, or that are the disease vectors or natural reservoirs. The parasitic diseases are a very important problem of modern medicine. That's why we study this section of biology more deeply. For determining parasite species, we must know the features of morphological structure on different stages of development. For example, cysts, vegetative form, parasite eggs, larvae, etc. The right determining of parasite species is a base for right establishing diagnosis. The study of parasite life cycle is necessary for prevention, infectious and invasive diseases. The results of study of relationships in the system parasite-host we use for creating science base of diagnostics and treatment of parasitic diseases. The parasites can live in any human organ, for example, gastrointestinal tract, eyes, blood, liver, heart, and another vital organ of human body. So the doctors with any specialization can face them in their practice. The general practitioners treats patients with giardiasis, amoebiasis, dermatosis. Surgeries occur. Surgery treatment patients with echinococcus, cysticercosis, intestinal obstruction caused by ascaris. The pediatricians rather often face to parasitic diseases because children often violate the rules of personal hygiene and have an insufficiently formed immune system. The problem of parasitic diseases is very important also because there is no immunity to many of these diseases, and the multiple repeated infections are possible. We see the photos of domestic parasitologists. There are the Russian scientists, Scriabin, Pavlovsky, Dogin. The next point of the lecture is parasite classification. We divide it on following groups. At first, true, the parasite is associated with the host during all its life. Piniform lysis, for example. False. Some free-living individuals can accidentally enter the human body and disrupt the normal life of the body. For example, larvae domestic flies in the human stomach. The next group is temporary. They are associated with the host only part of life, for example, blood-seeking insects, mosquitoes. Or permanent. They are associated with only one host or can move from one to another host. Independence of localization in the host body, the parasites divided on ectoparasites and endoparasites. The ectoparasites are on the skin. The endoparasites can be cavitary, living cavitous body or internal organs; tissue, living muscles, nerve tissue, for example; or intracellular, living cells. Presented classification is conditional, since for many parasitic forms, the degree of connection with the host varies greatly. Hosts of parasites are environment and source of power for these individuals. There are intermediate, definitive, reservoir hosts. The intermediate host is the organism in which the parasite exists in the larval stage or reproduces asexually. The definitive host is the body in which the parasite lives in a sexually mature stage or reproduces sexually. The reservoir host is the host in which parasites do not develop but accumulate and remain viable. The presence of reservoir hosts is of great epidemiological importance, since it is involved in maintaining natural foci of diseases. The origin of parasitism has multiple occurrences. At first, most ectoparasites have passed to parasitism from predation, lengthening of the timing of feeding and contact with host. Some parasites have moved to parasitism through commensalism. Endoparasites could have come from ectoparasites. There may have been an occasional transfer of free living forms into the host's body. The parasite and the host is a single biological system in which the influence of the host on the parasite and vice versa, as well as the influence of the environment on both partners occurs. The parasite usually has a pathogenic effect on the host. The action of the parasite on the host are mechanical tissue damage by mouth parts or hepta, bowel obstruction. Some tapeworms and roundworms, due to their large size, can cause intestinal obstruction or rupture of the wall. And the next one, migration of larvae by bloodstream, for example, of helminths eggs, can also have a pathogenic effect on the host. Accumulating in the hepatic ducts cause cirrhosis, for example. And the next one, allergic effect of waste product. The host organism influences the parasite, suppressing its vital activity. The influence of the host on the parasite are cell reaction. For example, human red blood cells affected by Plasmodium are 1.5 to 2 times larger than healthy ones. The next one, tissue reaction. The reaction manifests itself in the formation of a connective tissue capsule around the resting stage of the parasite, isolating the parasite from healthy tissues. For example, trichinosis, cysticercosis. And the next one, humoral reactions. Development-specific antibodies. In response to the enter of antigens from parasites, the host body produces protective antibodies. The mechanism of immunity in parasitic diseases is the same as in bacterial and viral infections. Persistent immunity develops only in some protozoan diseases and some helminthiasis. Excuse me. The development of immunity is complicated by the change of stages of the parasite, cysts, vegetative form, egg, larva, adult, since the antigens of each stage are specific. The most intense immunity develops if the parasite is in close contact with the host tissues, larvae in the tissues of the heart, muscles, for example. The interaction of the parasite and the host occurs in the specific environmental conditions. For a parasite, the environment is the human body, and for a human, the external environment is natural and social factors that indirectly affect the parasite. Adverse change in the physiological state, cooling, overheating, concomitant diseases, starvation, stress contribute to the activation of parasites. For example, non-pathogenic commensal form of dysentery amoeba with the weakening of the human body as a result of these reasons turns into a pathogenic tissue which leads to the development of serious disease. Amoebasis. The transition of amoebas to a pathogenic form often occurs in the wooden, so in the wartime, the number of soldiers with dysentery increases dramatically. In addition, amoebasis is more common in countries with a hot climate. The transition to a parasitic lifestyle is accompanied by the appearance of a number of adaptations of the parasite to new conditions of existence. There are following adaptations to a parasitic lifestyle. At first, morphological devices are reduction of organs of nutrition and movement, the presence of a hapter, highly specialized mouth parts of parasite insects. And the next one, physiological devices are the ability of the protozoa to produce exoenzymes for tissue digestion, the ability to form an anticoagulant, the ability to secrete anti-enzymes in intestinal parasites, ability to live in anaerobic conditions. And the next one, reproductive adaptations are hermaphroditism, providing self-fertilization, great fertility laid to a lot of parasites' eggs in environment, complex life cycle, ability for parthenogenesis. The parthenogenesis is a process in which from a single egg develop more than 100 larvae, which are invasive for the next host. The source of pathogens can be a person or an animal in whose body the parasite lives, reproduces, and is transmitted to new hosts. So there are reservoir hosts, organisms in which pathogens can be preserved for a long time. It can be a human or an animal. For example, rodents are natural reservoirs of plague, leishmaniasis, tularemia. In addition to reservoirs, there are vectors for circulation of many pathogens, blood-sucking insects, for example. Vectors can be specific and mechanical. Specific. In their body, a pathogen goes through certain stage of development, for example, malaria mosquito. And the mechanical vector contribute to the transfer of pathogens from the external environment to the human dwelling. Flies, for example. Classification of diseases. The first group is infectious pathogens, microorganisms, viruses, bacteria, fungi. And the next group, invasive pathogens, protozoa, helminths, or arachnids and insects. According to the method of transmission of the disease, it is classified as follows. Foodborne pathogens get through food, water, dirty hands. These include amoebasis, helminths, and infections. And the next group, contact-borne pathogens, enter through the skin actively or through the mucous membranes. For example, scabies passes to a healthy person through a handshake by contact. In addition, infectious and parasitic diseases, obligate vector-borne and facultative vector-borne are distinguished. The first one are transmitted only in the presence of a vector, such as malaria, for example. Facultative vector-borne diseases are transmitted not only by means of a vector, but also by elementary means through food products and water contaminated with pathogens. Examples of such diseases are plague, tularemia, which are transmitted through the bite of flies, as well as by contact from a sick person to a healthy person. Among the vector-borne diseases are zoonosis, diseases peculiar only to animals. Anthropozoonosis, found in both humans and animals. And anthropanosis, diseases peculiar only to humans. So the next point of the lecture are zoonotic infectious diseases. In 1939, academician Pavlovsky signaled a new category of diseases, diseases with natural foci. These diseases are characterized by the following features: occur on a specific territory, circulate in nature independently of humans. Their reservoirs are wild animals that make up a biozoonotic complex with pathogens and vectors. Natural foci. This is the territory of the globe with certain conditions of the environment in which the pathogen circulates. There are following components of natural foci: pathogen, reservoir host, for example, wild animals, transporter, blood-sucking arthropods, for example, and geographical territory, the specific climate conditions. The example of natural foci you can see on the screen. Thank you for your attention.